What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So Doom the Dark Ages is finally here, at least in early access at the time of making this video. Looking at performance on the Steam Deck, it's certainly going to be hit or miss. I would probably consider it fairly playable for the most part, but we're going to get into it and take a look at the settings and what we had to do to make the game run, because also it just doesn't want to launch if you're running on the stable channel for the OS. So I had to go in the system and switch over to the preview OS here, and I had it on Steam Deck Beta. You want to wind up on Steam OS 3.7.6, which is why we had to do that to get this to run. Hopefully that'll be changed by actual launch or sometime soon after. Now we have 1610, 800p full screen. You'll have 90 for your refresh rate if you're not plugged into the capture card like I am here. I have no VSync turned on, though you'll probably have that on as well for any kind of tearing. It's up to you. And then we have FSR and XeSS that we can use here. There's also TAA, but I'm mostly going to focus on the upscalers FSR and XeSS. And then as far as actual settings in here, everything's going to be just on low, and I left the default texture pool size here. So that's pretty much what we wound up with. Trying to tick things up really hurts the frame rate when we get into those heavy areas that are already in the 20. So we'll go ahead and get into it here, and most of this is going to come from Act 2 of the game, and performance is going to vary depending on what act and what area of the game you're in. I've seen 25 to 45 FPS depending on what's going on. As far as upscalers, we had about 37 FPS there at FSR unbalanced. If I wanted to change this over and put frame generation on just to check it out, it really doesn't work in this game. There are some games it works fine, but no matter what I do, I've not been able to get it to work at kind of half frame rates and breaks, and has all kind of issue in this game. So just staying away from that for now. Going back to normal FSR balance here at about 37 FPS. Now, I actually prefer XeSS and recommend using it, but you could go FSR or XeSS. If I switch over to that though, with balanced here, which I know that doesn't necessarily match in base resolution to FSR, it actually gains a couple of FPS most of the time. And I think image quality, like in most games, does tend to be a little bit better with XeSS. Especially when you get into motion, which you're going to do a lot in this game. There's less like flickering issue. We switch over to FSR here and you'll see a bit more of that flickering and shimmering on things that you just don't see with XeSS. So for me, since I'm not using frame gen or anything, I'm just going to go ahead and stick with XeSS balanced. You could adjust that to performance or quality or whatever you want. But as we get into a little bit more gameplay and check that out, you'll see that, like I was saying, performance for me, I've seen anywhere from 25 to 45 FPS, with a lot of my gameplay being between like 27 and 38 on average, it seemed like. So this is a game I know a lot of people prefer 60 FPS solid or maybe higher. So it may be a deal breaker for you on the Steam Deck trying to play this if that's not for you. Now, what I will say is frame pacing and frame times are good, and there aren't really any stutter issues. So even though it is lower frame rate a lot of the time, it doesn't really feel too clunky or an issue, especially when it does get up over that 35 FPS or so. But just be aware of what you're getting into if you do want to try playing this on the Steam Deck. So yeah, that's pretty much what we're looking at for performance here. You can see the lower frame rates here into the 20s in this heavier area, and again, depending on the act, place you're in, all that is going to depend on performance. But yeah, pick FSR, XeSS, whatever kind of upscaling you want, get it as aggressive as you want there, but raising any settings is going to hurt the performance even more here. But anyways, guys, I'm going to leave it at that for Doom the Dark Ages here on the Steam Deck. I'll leave you with a little bit more gameplay to check out here, and as always, thanks a lot for coming to check out the video. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.